What is going on, guys? TheBrokenMachine here. Hope you guys are all doing well today, and welcome to the best Battlefield 6 settings guide. Make sure to turn on your PC and console, sit back, relax, and follow along. If you begin with the gameplay tab and edit your controller options here, you won't have to change so many in the controller section, so make sure you do that. If you don't play inverted, turn this off here. I do, so I set it to on. You can change the vertical look settings for the vehicles here if you wish as well. You can change the hold or toggle options here. These are my values. I would recommend similar. If you don't know what you're doing, leave these on default values. The capture area outline allows you to easily see where you can actually capture a flag. Leave this on. Infantry aim sensitivity is your main sensitivity. Anywhere between 30 and 50 is going to be fine for most players. I personally use 100. I've been playing the series for a long time, and this works for me. With a lower sensitivity, it's much easier to stay on target at longer ranges. Higher sensitivities allow for more quicker reactions. Again, lower sensitivity is what I would recommend for most players. You can also change the mouse aim sensitivity here if you wish. These options here are mostly personal preference. Definitely recommend using what works for you. Now, a new option here is the mount breakout. So if you set this to instant, as soon as you come out of mounting, it's going to be instant, so you can move along and find a new position. Interact and reload, personal preference again, I would recommend prioritize reload. You can invert the demolition charge here if you wish, and you can turn off the inventory visibility here if you wish. I would leave this on. Should your vehicle aim sensitivity be the same as infantry? I would say no. Personally, I use 50. I don't think you need to be really snappy in vehicles. 50 is going to work for most players. Again, you can change the mouse aim sensitivity here if you wish. If you're new to the game, leave these aircraft and helicopter control sensitivities alone. Also, if you're new to the game, turn on helicopter control assist. So what will happen here is the helicopter will automatically hover when no input is applied. Now, vehicle aim relative controls can be quite confusing. I would recommend leaving these off. So the vehicle moves relative to where it is facing. When it's on, the vehicle moves relative to camera aim, which can be very confusing. Also recommend turning off decouple tank turret aiming from turning on both of these options here. So if you set this off, while the vehicle is moving, you can aim freely. Toggle or hold for the vehicle boost is entirely up to you. When it comes to infantry aim assist, this is your standard aim assist. I would recommend leaving this on 100. Slow down aim assist, basically while you're ADS and aiming at a target, your sensitivity will kind of slow down. I would recommend leaving this on 100. I personally do not use any zoom snap aim assist. Any snaps you see is my aim purely alone. I would recommend this on 0. If you're a new player, leave this on 100. I leave these aim assist options for the vehicles exactly as infantry. I would recommend you do the same. Now, because you've changed many controller options, when you get over to the controller tab, you won't have to change many things here. Now, you could do this the hard way and skip through all of these images here. I would recommend pressing triangle or Y and going straight to the control schemes right here. So we're going to start with the infantry controls here. You want to click modify on that one, and you can change the sensitivity settings here. You won't have to though, because you've already changed these. Field of view is basically what you can see in front of you. I would recommend somewhere between 90 and 106. If you go really high, you can see all around you, much better peripheral vision, but targets at long ranges become much more difficult to see. Now, if you go really low, you'll find it much easier to see targets at longer ranges, especially in darker places, but you lose that peripheral vision. Somewhere between 90 and 106 is going to be fine for most players. Uniform infantry aiming basically makes all the sights feel the same. So if you turn 90 degrees with iron sights on a pistol and then do the same with a 6x on a sniper, it's gonna feel the same in terms of sensitivity. I would highly recommend you leave this on. Leave the coefficient on default values. You'll find on the internet many arguments about which should be used. Personally, default works fine for me. Recommend the same for you. Again, aim assist settings here, we've just set that, so don't need to change these unless yours haven't changed here. As for the soldier aim input curve, I would recommend standard or linear. You can make it feel like a previous Battlefield title if you wish. Personally, I'm using standard. If you did turn on uniform infantry aiming, you cannot change the aim input curve here. When it comes to acceleration, I would set this all the way down to 0. So your aim is 1-to-1, there is no acceleration applied. Of course, you can have the acceleration feel like previous titles. Personally, stick this to standard and drop the aiming left-right acceleration all the way down to 0. When it comes to the movement, all of this is personal preference. I would not recommend changing the slide. We're going to do that in just a moment. Infantry weapon zoom, you can set this to hold or toggle if you wish. Don't change the buttons here, we'll change those in a moment. The vertical aim ratio, so basically, if you want your aiming on the horizontal and vertical axis to feel exactly the same, you can set these both to 100. You will have to turn off uniform soldier aim to do that. The zoom aim sensitivity is while aiming down sights. If you want your hipfire and ADS to feel the same, leave this on 100. If you want your zoom aim to feel different, perhaps you want it on 50%, so it's half the speed, or you maybe want to double it, you can set it to 200 here if you wish. And there is also another option here for the 1.25x as well. Again, we discussed some of these options here. We've already changed them, so you shouldn't have to change any of these. Now, of course, here you could go through all of the various vehicle options, but because we changed it earlier, these should be standard. So you shouldn't have to change these here either. So I've just saved you a ton of time, but if you wish, you can go through all of these and adjust these settings if you want to. So I do use alternate here for the controller settings here. Basically, circle becomes melee and the right analog changes to crouch or slide. This is much faster for your gameplay. I would highly recommend it. Here you can change the controls from default to southpaw, legacy southpaw, or custom settings. I would recommend leaving this on default. And of course, you can change the infantry control mapping here if you wish. I'm going to do this right now live on the tutorial so you can see what I use. So instead of using the back triggers to aim and fire my weapon, I use the front. If you don't want to do this, you can totally ignore this section. So you want to go down to the ping, rows, set this to L2, click bind anyway, go down to the grenade, set this to R2, bind anyway again, toggle camera, set this to R2, go all the way down, and you want to be looking for the option for fire. So we're going to set this to R1 and then set zoom to L1 as well. And you should be good to go. So only do that if you want to flip the triggers. At the bottom here, you can control the UI control mapping if you wish to. Personally, I'm going to use default values for this one. At the bottom here is a really important option, controller tuning. Click modify. Controller vibration, I would recommend turning this off. It does affect your aim, you don't need it. If you leave it on, there is various options here as well. I would recommend dead zone settings set to 13. So basically, the lower you have this, the more responsive your analog sticks are. I would recommend 13 for both sticks, and I would actually recommend leaving the actual dead zone and max input threshold for both sticks alone. Experienced players might want to change this, but most people leave this on default values. Now, over here, you want to set the dead zones for the triggers all the way to the bottom. So as soon as you press it, it's going to fire or aim down sight. So it's going to be super rapid, instant, highly recommend. In this game, you can also use the gyro options. Personally, I don't use any of these, but go ahead, try them if you wish. So the flake look mode, I would recommend leaving these on default values. They're going to work fine for most players. And that right there should be all of your controller options solved. You can of course adjust mouse and keyboard options here if you wish. I'm not using a mouse, so I'm not going to go through all of these. They are pretty self-explanatory. I will say though, do go down to the bottom here, advanced settings, and make sure mouse raw input is set to on. So this is raw aim. That's what you need. As for graphics, for the more competitive experience, make sure this is set to performance. Somewhere between 50 and 60 is going to be fine for most maps and players. Sharpness, I would recommend leaving this on the default value. Camera settings, you should not have to change any of these. We changed some of these earlier. As for the vehicle third-person field of view, this is when you're in a vehicle. Set this all the way to wide so you can see all the way around you. Weapon field of view, set this to wide so the weapon on screen isn't as large. Turn off any blur options here. You do not need these. It looks a bit gross as you're moving around the map. And set the camera shake amount all the way down to the lowest value, unless you want that cinematic experience. Chromatic aberration, these options here, set them all to off unless you really want them. They are not needed. Various interface and HUD options here, you can turn these off if you wish. Personally, I would leave these alone. And there is of course some advanced options here if you wish to change them. Most of these you can leave on default values. There is an option here to change the rotation of the minimap. You can enable this if you wish, so it rotates with the player view. Personally, I like this to be on. Dynamic minimap options as well. I'm going to leave this off for now, and I will update this guide's actual release game and see what actually works for me, but for now this should be good. So there is various options for the icons and indicators here. Honestly, you can mostly leave these on default values. I will, however, say if you want a much cleaner experience on the zoomed in here, you want to drop these icons down a bit. So icons opacity central zoomed, I drop this down to 20. The icons opacity for the objectives, drop this down to 20 as well. Basically any zoom settings here, when you're aiming down sight, the flag icons are not going to get in the way of any enemy players that may be in front of you. You don't have to adjust all this, but it does make a difference, especially if you're playing more aggressive. But you can leave most of this alone if you wish. Make sure to adjust your crosshairs here. I would highly recommend. I'm quite fond of a pinky kind of purple look. Blue is very, very popular, maybe a light blue. And of course, the standard green is very popular as well. But honestly, somewhere about there is pretty solid. A pinky purple is very easy to see. Highly recommend. Make sure to turn off the infantry crosshair projection. Basically, when disabled, the crosshair is static and always aligned with the center of the screen. Of course, there is various opacity options here. Change if you wish. Now for the hit indicators, I would actually recommend this color scheme here. So this is going to speed up your gameplay. For example here, I have blue on a standard hit. If I see red, it's a headshot, so I know I don't need to aim any higher. I could probably just get a body shot. And when I see green, I know to snap to a new target. So it actually helps to speed up your gameplay. Very helpful in close quarter situations. More options here if you wish to change them. Default values should suit most players. Turn off the chat here if you wish, and you can change the chat visibility options here as well. Again, default values should be fine. As for best audio settings, auto should work fine for most people. Turn on headphones if you need them. Audio mix, I would actually recommend default mix for this one. Night mode if you're playing late at night, and war tapes if you want that crazy experience. Any of these two war tape setting is gonna be insane. Basically, if you want to play this game as if you were in the trailer, it's gonna sound like that. It's absolutely intense. Footsteps might be a little louder on this one, but I've got to test this a little bit more, and honestly the default mix is going to be fine for most players. When you're actually in the game, I would recommend turning down the music volume to somewhere between 0 and 30. 30 should be fine. Battlefield has amazing music, but set this to 0 if you don't want any music. You may want to turn down the voiceover options as well. Somewhere around 50 should be fine. Controller speaker volume, I'm going to set this all the way down to 0. Enable or disable voice chat here if you wish. There is some accessibility options down here as well. Language and subtitles if you need them. Turn off the radio music in game if you don't want to hear random Battlefield music being played from vehicles or radios as you navigate across the map. More accessibility options here, pretty self-explanatory. There is some options if you are colorblind as well. Camera effects too, we did change these in other sections, so you don't really need to do that. Controls, controller, and various other options here as well. All of these are pretty self-explanatory, but mostly you can leave these alone. Lastly here we have the system options. Crossplay, turn it off if you don't want to play with PC players. Show player created content, turn off if you don't want to see anything that is player created content. Streamer options here, anonymous mode, again self-explanatory. Enable radio music, and all of these options are pretty straightforward. If you are having technical issues, go to network graph, turn on the network graphs here, record your gameplay, and send it in to someone who could help you. There is of course some options here that you may want to change on console. Make sure your resolution is set to the highest. I will be testing 1440p here just to see how it plays out, and I'll get back to you on that. If you have it, make sure VRR is set to automatic, as well as 120Hz output. Also ALLM if your TV supports it. Also in the accessories tab, make sure to set the communication method to USB cable for your controller if you're not using it via Bluetooth. Input lag should be lower. There is similar options here on Xbox, I'm sure you can find them. So as for the PC specific options here, I'm not going to go through every single thing. We have discussed this earlier in the controller sections. I will though be talking about a few things that you may want to change. Of course, you can change your infantry keybinds here. I'm sure if you're an experienced PC player, you're going to do this anyway. You know what this all is. But you might want to go down all the way here. Where is it? On control settings right here. Uniform infantry aiming. We talked about that earlier. If you want all of your sights to feel the same, you want to turn this on. Leave the coefficient on default unless you really know what you're doing. FOV options here as discussed earlier. I'll put some examples on screen right now so you can see the changes as well with those. The settings that really matter though are the graphics settings. We have more options on PC. I would recommend setting performance to custom. You could set it to just performance if you just want the game to do it all for you. So set that to custom, set this graphics quality to custom as well, and then click modify. What I would recommend just for now is to set all of these to high. If you've got a medium to high-end gaming system, high should look pretty good. That's what we were using on the beta stream just the other day, and it looked gorgeous, played really well. Sure, we can tweak some of these settings even further, and there will be a new guide as we go throughout the beta, but for now this is going to look pretty nice. Now of course, I'm sure most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Texture quality, it says what it is what it is, you know. I'm sure you can figure out all of these as you go. So of course you need a restart. I am recording this video, of course. Field of view options here again. Make sure world motion blur is 0, weapon motion blur 0, camera shake all the way down to the lowest value unless you want that cinematic experience. All of these options off as well. Set full screen here. I'm on borderless because I'm recording. On your main monitor on this one, your highest resolution, make sure to turn off vertical sync. That will affect input lag, and with a mouse, that's really important. Make sure that is off as well. Actually, on the advanced tab here in the graphics section, make sure to click modify, and down here you can change the frame rate limiter. You might want to turn that on if you've got if you're streaming using other apps at the same time. Make sure NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency is set to enabled and boost. If you're having issues, try enabled and turn it off if you're having serious issues. But for most people, this should be fine. AA, you can turn this off here. I'm going to be testing TAA and off and see which works best in the beta. Upscaling technique, if you need to upscale, set this to on. Multi-frame generation, I would leave this off. Future frame rendering, this does increase visual smoothness at the cost of input lag. Turn this off if you want to be competitive. And of course, you can turn on the performance overlay here to see how your settings are really working in game. Highly recommend you do that at the beginning. Jump into a server in the spawn and see how it's all going. I know most of you PC players already play a lot of other games, so I don't think I need to go through all of the settings here. Do watch the previous sections though, and you can see me talk about all of the settings, and they apply to PC here as well, even though you are using mouse and keyboard. When it comes to some of the Windows and NVIDIA settings, I would highly recommend you copy my settings here. This is in the NVIDIA control panel. I'll just leave that up for a moment there, but that's going to help you out in the game. Also make sure the color settings here are set to 70% on the digital vibrance, and the colors are going to pop and look really nice. Of course, do make sure your desktop and your game is actually running at the highest refresh rate available for your computer. Do hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This has been the best Battlefield 6 settings guide. We will update these options as the beta unfolds, and of course, there will be a new guide for the full release. Big thanks to you guys for watching. Make sure to drop a like on your way out. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you very soon.